Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Pravikacharya Ashtotar Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Pravikacharya Ashtotar Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Hridayat Nasta Preyu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, good morning. So, Bhakta Tyler, he's writing the...
No, he's not. 2 minutes. No verse.
No verse today. All right. So, if you guys have devices, we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, Text 32. Okay. Uchur Nishiditas Tams Te Vaivasvata Pura Sahara Ke Yuyam Patishidaro Dharma Rajasya Shasanam Uchir Nishiditastamste Vaivasvata Purasaraha Keyuyam Pratishidaro Dharma Rajasya Shasanam Uchir Nishiditastamste Vaivasvata Purasaraha Keyuyam Pratishidaro Dharma Rajasya Shasanam Uchir Nishiditastamste Vaivasvata Purasaraha Keyuyam Pratishidaro Dharma Rajasya Shasanam Dharma Rajasya Shasanam Anyone else would like to chant? Mataji, would you like to? You don't? Okay. Okay. Anyone? Okay. Synonyms. Uchuhu replied. Nishiditaha, being forbidden. Tan, to the order carriers of Lord Vishnu. Te, they. Vaivasvata, of Yamarāja. Purasaraha, the assistants or messengers. Ke, who. Yuyam, of all you. All of you. Pratishidaraha, who are opposing. Dharma Rajasya, of the king of religious principles. Yamaraja. Shasanam, the ruling jurisdiction. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When the order carriers of Yamarāja, the son of the sun god, were thus forbidden, they replied, "Who are you, sirs, that have the audacity to challenge the jurisdiction of Yamarāja?" Purport. According to the sinful activities of Ajāmila, he was within the jurisdiction of Yamaraja, the supreme judge appointed to consider the sins of the living entities. When forbidden to touch Ajāmila, the order carriers of Yamaraja were surprised, because they had never been hindered in the execution of their duty by anyone within the three worlds. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahaguna Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karuti Vachalam Pangam Langaiti Girim Yakripatam Maham Vande Shri Gurun Dinatarana. So I'll read the translation one more time. When the order carriers of Yamarāja, the son of the sun god, were thus forbidden, they replied, "Who are you, sirs, that have the audacity to challenge the jurisdiction of Yamaraja?" So in human society, one of the most painful, traumatic experiences that we can have is losing a loved one. Someone that we hold very dear in our hearts, you know. And I'm sure we all have experience of this. And even as devotees, you know, we had friends, we had Shiksha gurus, or even our own Guru Maharaj. They left their body. So we miss their association, we miss their guidance, we miss the person. So this pastime of Ajāmila, I like it because when I first was inquiring, Atato Brahma Jigyasya, one of the questions I had was, what is death? What happens at the time of death? And is there life after death? So I was curious about all these questions. And, you know, death is kind of like a taboo for a lot of people. They don't want to discuss it, they don't want to talk about it. And I remember when I first started going on book distribution, this devotee told me, don't mention three things: God, sin, and death. And so I was thinking, but that's our philosophy, right? So it was kind of difficult. And so, therefore, Srila Prabhupada, he would mention that Vani is more important than Vapu. Vani means the words or instructions of the spiritual master. And then Vapu means the physical presence of the person. And so even when the person is not here, we can always remember them through their words. All of these wonderful disciples of Srila Prabhupada, even though Srila Prabhupada has left this planet, they still remember him through his instructions. And we hear so many stories of people being paralyzed by losing someone. You know, they can't move on. They don't know how to bounce back up. They don't know how to continue. And so death is very painful. And you know, in book distribution, when I present the Bhagavad Gita, there's a picture of there's a family holding, you know, someone that has died. And then I tell them this verse, that a wise person, those who are wise, lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So they look at me a little crazy because they think, you know, you're not going to miss the person. But I tell them that the soul is eternal. We don't die when the body dies. And it's actually our inherent nature to want to seek eternality, because we ourselves, the soul is eternal. But due to this material world, all of our relationships end, and that causes a lot of heartache. And you know, when people are too much absorbed in losing a loved one, it stops their, you can say, spiritual progress, you know. And then sometimes there's doubts, you know, if there is God, why would he take my loved one away from me? I don't remember who it was, but I remember listening to a class, and this person said, those that send their brothers, their sons, their husbands to war, if they don't come back, I guess it's what they call atheistic cry, right? God, why did you take this person away from me? I've been a good person, so if there is God, why is He putting me through so much heartache and suffering? But Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. I remember I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. The first person who I saw die was my grandfather. He was in the living room, and I thought he was just taking rest or he was sleeping. And I noticed all of my family members, they were surrounding him. And I was thinking, why are they crying? And my cousins and I, we had no clue. So we went outside and we were just playing. And then later on, after a few hours, I saw the ambulance and they brought my grandfather to a stretcher and they carried him out. And I was thinking, where's my grandpa going? And then, as you age or as you mature, you start realizing, that person, I don't see him anymore. And then you find out that, there's a thing called death. But Srila Prabhupada, he would mention that death is unnatural for the soul. We're not meant to die. But now that we're in contact with the material modes of nature, we have this conception that I am this body, and that when I leave this body, there's a lot of atheistic views out there. They think that there is no God, there's no life after death. So it's their excuse to commit a lot of sinful activities. And I remember I was going out on book distribution, and when you talk about death, so many people open up, their hearts pour out. They start crying, they start weeping. And I remember when my grandmother, she passed away a few months ago, in the funeral home, everyone was crying. So I was thinking, man, I need to change this. So I gathered the courage to read that verse in the Bhagavad Gita. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts a new material body, giving up the old and useless ones. And when I read this, I looked up, and everyone was kind of thinking about this. So I was explaining to them that when our clothes, when they no longer serve their purpose, when they can no longer keep us warm, we get new clothes, right? So similarly, when this body is not fit enough, or it's not fit anymore for us to do service for Krishna, we have to give it up. But that next body determines on our consciousness. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajit yatin kevalaram. Tam tamivati konteya siddhatad bhava bhavataha. That whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he attains without fail. And so what are we going to be thinking of at the time of death? That's the test, right? Are we going to think of our spouse? Are we going to think of our dog? Are we going to think of work that we haven't fulfilled yet? And Srila Prabhupada, he said something. He said, material success is only successful as long as you're alive. But as soon as the soul leaves the body, you forget all about your work. You forget all about your progress or status in society. And I used to work at a nursing home, and I had a lot of realizations working there. And I'm not sure if it's the culture here, but most of the residents, they were American bodies. It was rare to find someone who was African, someone who was from, Latin roots, or even Asian. And I was kind of curious about this, And then I learned that a lot of cultures, they're more family-oriented. They want to take care of their loved ones, on the verge of death. But here in America, and maybe starting all over the world, everyone's so busy now They're too busy with their family, they're too busy with their jobs, and they just leave their parents in nursing homes. And it's one of those sad truths that you see. You know, people, they're looking for their family. You know, have you seen my son? And we have to always lie to them, or, you know, some of them, they develop dementia or Alzheimer. So they won't even remember, you know, what you said 5 minutes ago. But they're always searching for that person in their family. Is my daughter here? You know, did she come here today? So it's very sad. So it makes you question, you know, I should start preparing for death. You know, when Parikshit Maharaj, when he was cursed to die in 7 days, I use that as one of my tactics on book distribution. I tell him, if you had 7 days to live, how would you spend those remaining days? And people would tell me, I'm going to spend it with my loved ones, right? I'm going to try to enjoy as much as I can. And I show him the Bhagavad Gita, and I said, this king, he did the exact opposite. He renounced his kingdom. He renounced his family. And then so they asked me, what did he do? I told him that he started asking questions. How should I prepare for death? What should one listen to at the time of death? And so we shouldn't be too overly attached to a person, because, you know, lack of Krishna consciousness, it creates so much fearful conditions and situations in life. And but it's healthy to move on. We have to acknowledge that. You know, people hold on to grudges, people hold on to memories of their loved ones, but that doesn't really help us. We have to move on. Just like, you know, we may have a difficult service to do, but we don't just leave it and go to another service. We have to try to finish it or complete it to the best of our abilities. And when Ajāmila saw the Yamadutas, he became fearful and started describing the features of these Yamadutas. They were deformed. They had fierce, twisted faces, and their hair standing erect on their bodies. They had ropes in their hand. Imagine seeing that. Right before you die, you see these fierce-looking personalities approaching you with the rope. And I remember when I was working in Coronado, there was a resident. I would hear something in the hallway, help me. And so I thought it was like a ghost. And when I went down the hallway, I saw this skinny, elderly lady. She couldn't walk, but somehow or other, she managed to get herself up, and she was holding on to the side rails. And I asked her, what's going on? Why are you not in bed? And she said, I don't want to go to that room. And I said, why? So I took a wheelchair and I transferred her to the wheelchair, and I put her back in her room. And then when I was putting her in bed, she said something to me. She said, who are those people behind you? And I looked behind me, it was a couch, but it was empty. And when I said, there's no one there, and she said, no, there's someone there. This person has a tail. And so I looked back again, and I said, okay, I'm going to put the covers on you, you know, and I'm going to put your call light next to you, and if you need anything, press this button. So I got out of there. So you hear so many different stories like that, you know, right before they leave their body, they have some type of encounter, or, you know, they see someone. And I remember who here has experienced someone dying in their life? Okay. So it's, you know, working at a nursing home, you see that it's kind of common. So therefore, we have these, it's called 2-hour checks. And if they're closer to death, we check on them every 30 minutes. And if they're closer and closer, it becomes 15 minutes. And so I remember I told all of my co-workers, please check on this patient, you know. And you need to let me know ASAP so I can call the family, I can call the mortuary. And I had a co-worker, you know, Srila Prabhupada, he says the difference between a living body and a dead body is a soul. The soul is still in that body. And there was a resident, she had passed away. So I asked this this coworker of mine, can you please change her into clean clothes? Her family is coming. And so he came back to the med room, and then he told me, okay, it's done. So I was kind of testing him. I said, how is she? And then she said, oh, she's fine, you know. I said, did she say anything? She said, no, she was sleeping. And I told him, you know, she passed away, right? And his eyes opened up, and I said, you didn't notice? And he didn't notice at all. So that told me two things. One, he was manhandling her, meaning just, you know, forcing the clothes on her. Two, people are not aware of what they're doing. They're unconsciously doing something. And so there was this one lady also. Her family had just visited her, and they were having lunch, and 5 minutes later, we find that her room was locked. They were about to take her out. And then when we found, she never locks the door, so this was something strange. And when we opened the door, she was lying dead on her floor. No. Yeah, within 5 minutes of being with her family. And so, I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but everything leaves the body. All of the nasty things leave the body. So and she was a pretty heavy person, so we put her on a sheet and we carried her to her bed, and the paramedics came. But the family, they were weeping and they were crying. And so yeah, death is a very painful experience. And I remember there was another lady. I like to say this because it kind of puts things in proper perspective. She was about to leave her body, and she was a millionaire. And you know, they write wills. And so she didn't trust her family, she didn't trust her kids, she didn't have any friends. So who did she give her millions to? Okay. Her cat. And what is that cat going to do with millions of dollars, right? So people work so hard, and at the end they can't even enjoy it. I tell this on book distribution, that people that have money, they can't even enjoy it. They're always worrying, they're always in anxiety. How am I going to maintain my wealth? How am I going to secure it? How am I going to make more wealth? So they're actually in anxiety, they're not enjoying. But due to the material nature, they are in ignorance and in illusion. They think that they're enjoying. And just a fun fact, I was with the billing person, and she showed me the bill for these residents. For a small room with the closet, you know, shared bathroom, you know how much they were, this was like, I don't know, 5 or 7 years ago. You know how much they were charging? Huh? 1,500. No. If you had, you're close, Balram. If you had a shared room, it was $3,000. But if you had your own, it was $6,000 a month. And so I was thinking, I don't want to go. I don't want to go like this, you know. And I always thought that meant retirement, to be retired at old people's home, you know, getting food delivered to you, watching TV all day. But when I met the Vaishnavas, I saw what real retirement is. You know, they take sannyas, they go out and preach Krishna consciousness. They try to help the people. And I remember there was this Mataji. Her name is Osuna. And she would always try to break through doors. She would always try to go outside. And she only spoke Spanish. And when we asked her, where are you going? She said, I'm looking for my son. So everyone's looking for a relationship in this material world. And we don't want our relationships to end, but they have to end. These are the terms and conditions that Krishna put when we wanted to enjoy this material world. When I first started coming to the temple, you know, we have books here. I would always get books, give a donation, and then read that book, come back, get another one. And one of the first books that I read was Second Chance. And it's about Ajāmila, and I loved it, you know. And it was answering all of the questions that I was asking. You know, at the time of death, am I going to see my family? What am I going to see? You're going to see the Yamaduta. That's for sure. Hopefully the Vishnu Dutas are going to come. But this book was asking questions like, what is Dharma? What is purification? What is eternal life? And who is taken to Yamarāja? And so the regulative principles serve to keep us on the standard of human life. When I go on book distribution, I tell them this book, it helps you to become a proper human being. And they said, why? And I tell them because we share 4 basic instincts with animals: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And Srila Prabhupada, he says that religion is the difference between us and animals. An animal, he cannot understand what is God, what is my relationship to God. He's just looking for that she mate, right? Or he mate, that's all. And so this is kind of a riddle, okay guys? What is the death rate in America? Huh? Man, you guys are too smart. Yeah, I know. But it's 100%, you know, and I ask people on book distribution, what is the death rate in Asia? And then they'll start comparing America to Asia, you know, 20%, 15%, and I just start laughing. And I said, what about in Europe? You know, oh, it's less. You know? So I tell them the death rate everywhere is the same, 100%. And they say, that's true. Everyone dies. Even Hiranyakashipu, he performed austerities and he asked Lord Brahma, basically, I want immortality. I don't want to die. But Lord Brahma, he told him, I can't give you what I don't have. And then, so who can give eternal life? Krishna. Krishna. Only Krishna. And so, and I remember when I was going to the immigration and citizenship office, there's this thing that they asked, the rule of law. Do you remember this, Tyler? So this rule of law means everyone must follow the law. Government must obey the law. No one is above the law. So similar to this material world, we have to die. We have to die. And when I meet people on book distribution that are too much into themselves, you know, what I guess I call it cake face, you know, too much makeup, cake face. And I tell them, you know, no one wants to grow old, but we have to grow old. And I tell them we have to die one day. And so shouldn't you start asking, you know, is there life after death? I like to say this because, you know, preaching means to use sharp words sometimes, even though they don't want to hear it, but they have to hear it. So Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, birth, death, old age, and disease. These are what we have to be dealing with here. Everyone, you know, and also Ajāmila, he had 10 kids when he was 88 years old. That's something to think about. And nowadays in Kali Yuga, there are unwanted children, Varna Shankar. And so in this way, society becomes degraded. You know, people, they don't want anything to do with their children. Sometimes they leave them, you know, they even leave the mother to do this and that. And Srila Prabhupada, he says that a monkey has very good facility for enjoying sex. In some ways, a monkey is renounced. He lives naked in the forest. He eats only fruit. But his nature is that he must have at least 36 wives for sex enjoyment. So-called renunciants who wear the cloth of a sadhu but secretly enjoy illicit sex with women are just like monkeys. And Srila Prabhupada says if they're not servants of Krishna, we don't listen to them. We don't take their advice. You know, when you observe someone, you see them by the qualities that they have. Are they patient? Are they kind? Are they peaceful? Things like that. And it says that a paid servant will serve in proportion to the money he receives. But in Vaikuntha, there is no question of being a paid servant. There's like a handful of times where someone asks me, how much do you get paid for this? To distribute books. And I tell them, I don't get paid for this. And so people are always looking for a reason why to do things, right? They want this job so it can pay the bills. They want this job to try to impress the other person. They want this job to get a new car, a new phone, this and that. But for the devotees, we should just want to serve Krishna out of love and devotion. I remember His Grace Rajendra Nandana Prabhu. He was here in the patio, and he told me something. He said that there was a pujari, him and his wife, I guess the pujari, the man, he wanted to, do service for Krishna out of his own free will. But the wife was saying, oh, you should ask the temple if they can pay you. And when Srila Prabhupada heard this, Srila Prabhupada was crying. He said, devotional service is a privilege. We should keep that in mind. So devotional service is not cheap. It's not anybody can just take to it. It has to be the mercy of Krishna or His pure devotees that we can engage in devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada, he says, foolish people say that the Vaikunthas do not work, but the Vaishnavas work for Krishna 24 hours a day. While we are in this material world, we have to work, but we work for Krishna. Dimitri and I, we were cleaning the kitchen last night after, Bhakti Kevin, he had this catering, and so the kitchen was a mess, But we still did it because, and Bhakti Bob also, he was working hard at washing pots, and that made me appreciate the devotees. We do work hard for Krishna, and so we're almost out of time. So when Sanatana Goswami approached Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to become his disciple, Sanatana Goswami surrendered himself and said, "My dear Lord, when I was a minister, people used to address me as a learned man, and so I accepted that. I was learned and intelligent, but actually I am neither learned nor intelligent because I do not know what I am. This is the result of my learning. I know everything except what I am and how to get out of this miserable material condition of life." I meet so many scientists, they're so proud of their knowledge. They can break down the DNA, the cause and effect, this and that. But when you ask them real questions, what is the purpose of human life? They don't have an answer for that. What is death? What is consciousness? They don't have an answer for that. So Srila Prabhupada, and in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Maya parita jnana. That means that their real knowledge is stolen by illusion. They make so much so-called advancement, but what is their advancement, right? Is to eat, sleep, sex, and defending. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, Yai Krishna Tadva Veta, say Guru Hai. One must know Krishna, then he can become a guru. And so that's what I was talking about. We don't just accept any fools or rascal and take their advice, What should I do? Oh, you should do this. No, you go to a Vaishnava, you go to your spiritual master. And I want to conclude. There was a young lady in Balboa Park, and I was trying to, Vijay, he does this waving thing with the pamphlets. He goes like this, and somehow or other they go to his table. So I'm trying to perfect that art, And some people,
Like a fish boat.
yeah, some people come, some don't. So I'm still trying to do that, And people do come to my table, but it's funny. But I was trying to do that to this lady, and she said, "No thanks, I'm past that." When I was watching her, what was she doing? She was serving her 2 dogs nicely, a menial servant. And it was funny because the dog just passed stool, and she had to pick it up. And I was thinking, okay, you're past Krishna consciousness, but Srila Prabhupada, he said, if you don't want to serve God, serve dog. That's true. You see it all around the material world. So we could either serve Krishna, or we could serve the mind, the senses, we can serve fallible soldiers. And, okay. Yesterday, there was a lot of people, but what were they doing? They were playing a game, a Pokemon game. you know, little kids, adults, elderly people, they were playing this game, and I was thinking, what such a waste of time, you know. So people are expert at wasting time now. Video games, sports, television, newspapers. So we should not waste time. And to conclude, I always keep this in mind. Dharma Setu Prabhu, he said one thing in the class, he said, the finish line is just ahead. All we have to do is sprint towards the finish line. You know, we know what the goal of life is. We know the process. We know what happens when we fall away. We know birth, death, all of that. And we've been through all of that. So why not sprint towards the finish line in this life and go back home, back to Godhead? Okay, that's all I have. Any questions, comments, corrections, chastisement? Yes, Maharaj.
No chastisement. It was a very nice class, actually. Quite thought-provoking. I just wanted to, I have a question, and then I wanted but I wanted to add a comment first. You know, I appreciate the devotional service. We don't want, Prabhupada sanctioned, although he's very strict on the amount, he approved fully monthly maintenance, we call it devotee maintenance, to the householders working at the art department. They had children, they had to have a roof over their house, they had to pay their Gurukula fees and medical bills for their kids. So they were not salaried workers, they did not get, you know, production benefit pays, they didn't get any of that, they didn't, you know, whatever. But they needed maintenance to support their family. Mm-hmm. I mean, Dainiti gets a maintenance, something. You know, what else are we going to do? What's he going to do with his little daughter if he doesn't have an apartment, and his wife, although she's pretty austere? So we don't want, you know, we pay their utilities, we pay their apartment rent. Because he's the treasurer, he deliberately rents the funkiest, smallest apartment he can live in. So, you know, I don't want devotees to walk away thinking, oh, you know, if you take a salary, you're just a materialist and you don't understand devotional service. Because that's not what's happening at all. They're not taking a salary for their oceans of service. We give them a small facility so they can have a roof over their head and the lights go on. So, and that's completely authorized by Prabhupada. Just as I know what you meant, and your point is right. It's not just a pay-to-play, you know, relationship. So I don't want to take away from what you said, but I want devotees to not misunderstand, and you know, because it's actually offense to these great Vaishnavas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, so there's that. The question is, excellent class. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to turn the conversation. So you're saying that, you know, someone dies who's helped me, so my mother, my father, you know, whatever it may be, and they just keel over and I don't feel a thing? Bury them under a fruit tree. So, you know, I mean, we don't feel anything? That sounds pretty impersonal and ungrateful to me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Maharaj. Yes, we do have feelings. Srila Prabhupada said it's natural to miss someone, but we don't dwell on their leaving the body. That's what I'm trying to say. And, you know, all of us, like I mentioned earlier, we're looking for relationships that is eternal. We're looking to be loved, we're looking to love someone, but we are putting that attention on someone that is going to disappoint us someday. So the only person is Krishna. Krishna is our best friend. He's our master. He's our, you know, so many things. So I think that's okay. Yes, Bhakti Bhav? Okay. Yes.
You were talking about how we need to remember Krishna at the time of death, but a lot of us aren't going to be lucky enough to be, like you were talking about Alzheimer's, you're talking about maybe being incapacitated in some sort. So what happens when you are like that at the time of death?
Okay. So Krishna, you know, we always hear it that whatever little service that we render to Krishna, that goes to our spiritual bank account. It becomes our permanent asset. And even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said we don't even want liberation. We want to just keep serving Krishna. So even if we do have to take birth again, then we should be happy, because we'll be born in a Vaishnava family. We can continue where we left off. And so it's a win-win situation for devotees. But that's why cultivation of Krishna consciousness is very important in this life. We should always try to mold our life in such a way where we can always remember Krishna. I hope that helped. Yeah. But yeah, Alzheimer's, there's a story. There was a devotee, he did so much service for Srila Prabhupada, and somehow he had Alzheimer's, and they didn't know where this devotee went. And so they went to all of the hospitals or clinics, and when they went, I'm kind of putting this quickly, but they went to the front desk, and the front desk said, "You're Hare Krishna?" So they said, "Yeah." He said, "We have the person you're looking for." So this person that they were looking for, although he had dementia, Alzheimer, he was still getting everyone to chant Hare Krishna. So even if you do remember, Krishna will give us the intelligence, to remember him somehow or other. So.
Yeah, there was this devotee. This was some years ago, but she was a Prabhupada disciple, and yeah, she got dementia. She just couldn't remember anything. Mm-hmm. And I think it was around the Boston area. And Naranjana Swami, because he's from that Boston temple, he joined there, I believe. But so he knew of her, and she just but somehow or other, she remembered the Hare Krishna mantra. Mm-hmm. She forgot everything else besides the Hare Krishna mantra. Mm-hmm. And she was there's videos of her chanting, and it was some years ago. But also you have Vrajavadu here, San Diego. I mean, Dravida Prabhu and myself, we went to visit her one time, and yeah, she was, she wasn't sure where she was, San Diego here, there, where the building was or anything like that. But, she'd be chanting on her beads, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. She'd also forget how many rounds she'd chant, so she'd keep on chanting, Wasn't sure if it was 16, she'd keep on going, So, anyways, there's things like that.
My grandmother, when she passed away at 97, had severe dementia, severely. I always say my grandmother, when she passed away at 97, had severe dementia and didn't remember anything. And when she left her body, she was chanting. And even at the very last moments, she couldn't even make the words, but the cadence and the rhythm of chanting was there. Even till the very end, when it was just sound. Mm-hmm. And she had very bad dementia. Just interesting.
Here's from the Upanishad. Let this temporary body be burned to ashes. Let the air of life emerge with the brutality of air. Now, O my Lord, please remember all my sacrifices. And because you have become the beneficiary of all, please remember all that I have done for you. And Prabhupada was teaching at Upanishad in 1970, the devotees in the LA temple. And when he spoke on this verse, he teaches a verse a day. This whole verse, wonderful. But the point is that Prabhupada said, even you forget Krishna. Prabhupada said, you think that Krishna is an ingrate? So Krishna will remember us. As I'm thinking with my luck, I'll be walking down the street, there'll be a manhole that'll be open, I'll be looking, what's that sign all about? I'll go, and I'll be born, I don't know where, Campbell's soup factory or something. But no, it doesn't work like that. Krishna remembers us. Even the smallest, in the Padma Purana, there's a story that in the altar, there was a mouse. I can't remember all of it. Really happy to hear. But there was, we used to do it here, but it's a fire hazard. There was we used to keep bowls, and you'll see it in South Indian temples. There'll be bowls of ghee with a cotton wick on the altar, and sometimes the wick burns down and it goes out. You know, it goes out because of the ghee. So, you know, you have to pull the wick up a little. They need tending with it. So the point is that this wick on the altar was just about to go out. And there was a mouse who went on the altar, no intention of devotional service at all. We had a rat that used to go on the altar for some time there, and the devotee said, "Oh, Krishna's drinking the kheer." And I said, "Well, hang on a minute, that's not good." But this mouse went on the altar in the Padma Purana, drank some of the ghee, and just brought it down enough, the wick went up. And he went before Yamarāja, the little mouse, off he goes, and he was born as a Vaishnava in the heavenly planets. And I wouldn't, you know, you get a benediction, don't ask a question, just take it and go. So, but he asked Yamarāja why. And Krishna had remembered that little bit of service, not even intentional. He drank that little bit of ghee to fill his little mouse belly, but because it revived the flame, and that was devotional service, he got the full benefit of knowledge, of knowing devotional service. So we can rest assured, not that we should coast on it, but we should know that Krishna is not an ingrate. And whatever service we've done, he will intervene, wherever we may be, whatever. Sudama, who was a nice sannyasi, Prabhupada loved his sandesh, was in charge of the Hawaii temple for years, fizzled out, drifted away. It's a whole story. After Prabhupada left, he was a very sensitive person, he couldn't tolerate it. He surfaced again years later, I don't know when he was in LA, at least 25 years later, and after a ragged life after the case of Prabhupada. And blissful LA devotees took good care of him. He wanted it. Many people at the time of death want to be on the floor. They want to be on the ground. I don't know why, but he wanted to be on the ground. They put him down on the ground. He was just there. I think he was chanting, whatever. But at the very last moment, he put his arms up and said, "Prabhupada, you came and left this world." So Krishna doesn't forget us. We can take assurance in him. It's not by our own strength that we go back to God.
Thank you, Maharaj.
One small addition. My mother.
Gotcha.
My mother was.
Give birth to you. She's got three paths back to God.
My mother was always favorable. You know, she immediately was a subscriber to Back to Godhead magazine. And after my father passed, she took care of my father, and he left in '87. He was about 80 years old. And she was a couple of years younger. And she soldiered on. She lived till 96. And then passed away around 2006. And I would go see her periodically. And she was in, you know, sometimes she was in a assisted living. You know, she wasn't, you know, she was, and I would go there and we turned on I bought a tape and we were chanting Hare Krishna and we did a little dance, you know, like that. So then finally it came to the point. She was living with my brother. My brother had taken her in. This is in Ithaca, New York. And he wanted to travel, so he called me up and said, like, "I want to visit my son in Chicago. We're going to go visit, so you come and take care of Mom for a week or whatever it was." So I flew up there. And by that time, it was a hospice situation, you know, don't call 911, you know. So she was, my brother had lost her glasses, she couldn't see. So finally there was a point, and I said, "Mom, it's time for japa." She never chanted japa before, you know. So she couldn't memorize the whole mantra or anything. She was, you know, a little dementia. But I would chant like two words, Hare Krishna, and she would repeat. It's a perfect pronunciation. You know, I have a recording of it. I said, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It was like that. It went on for about 15 minutes. So she did japa. A week later, she passed, you know. So, you know, it's just that she was always, and this is important for all devotees, and Prabhupada told us this, is that it's in the books, that the best thing you can do for your parents and, you know, your generations of parents, is to become a devotee. If you're a sincere devotee, then it redounds to your parents and those who are attached to you. And so you can think how logical that is. The parents are always going to think of their kids, you know. And if their kids, my father, he never reconciled. He said, "When are you getting out of that thing already?" You know, he's on his deathbed practically. And so, but he was thinking of me. Yeah, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You know, he didn't say, but the point is, they have a connection to you, and therefore, if you're a good devotee, or even trying to be a good devotee, then they'll think Hare Krishna, and there's that attachment there, and you know, their birth is a million times more auspicious than if you're just a karmi. So that's one thing for every devotee to remember, is that, you know, and then stay in touch with them. We were told, you know, in those days, no cell phones, 73, call your parents once a week. You know, just call them up, you know, stay in touch with them. So they know that you're still, you know, alive.
Thank you, Govardhana. Yes?
Okay, I'll see Brajabadu, who we all know was a saint, and I'll see Neela's devotee grandmother, and Dravita's favorable mother, and I'll raise you my agnostic father. Agnostic probably since he was 18 years old and was a photographer during the recovery after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and saw other 18 and 19-year-old farm boys, you know, was taking photographs of 18 and 19-year-old farm boys being pulled out of the wrecks of those ships, and decided that was it with him and God. So his whole life he was an agnostic. And he and I we were estranged sometimes for decades at a time. We just didn't see any occasion to speak. But toward the end of his life, he reached out, and I reached out we were both ready to come together. And at the very end, his wife, his fourth wife, called me and said, "Bill, your dad's done. He wants out. He's tired of the pain, tired of being a pain, tired of being dependent, tired of the whole thing." And I thought for about 3.5 seconds, and I said, "I'm coming up." And I drove for 2 days to go be with my dad, and I spent the week with him, and just hanging out, joking around, catching up. As I was packing to leave, I thought, okay, this is a good time to take care of the dad issues. And then I started looking for the dad issues, and they were gone. There were no dad issues. There was dad needs me. So when it was time, when he was actually giving up his body, his wife called me. I'd gone upstairs for a quick nap. She called me like a little after midnight, and I went down and I held his hand and sang the Maha Mantra to him until half hour after he drew his last breath. And he was helpless. He was completely helpless. He was completely at my mercy. And then I realized, oh God, I'm chanting to my agnostic father, and I just looked at him. He couldn't do anything, but I just looked at him and I said, "Dad, I'm not doing this to upset you. I'm not doing this to convert you. It's apparently what I do when someone I love is dying. This is my first opportunity." So yeah, Krishna makes arrangements even for my dad. You know, he moved me within my heart immediately to just say, okay, it's going to be a hassle, but it's your dad. Drive up and spend a week with him. And so, yeah. And as you know, when we first moved into the temple a million years ago, we were told, don't have any contact with your parents. But we all pretty much learned that our parents' best asset was our relationship with Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters. We figured out ways to share that with them, even my dad.
Because you should
Thank you.
I have one for you.
Okay.
And we can end it. I don't want to go on too long here, but I think it's quite useful. And Neela knows there was a huge rift between me and my parents when I became a devotee. Just irreconcilable, seemed to be the gulf as wide as the Grand Canyon. And over a whole series of events, and Neela and Anasuya were instrumental in pulling them towards Krishna. But the thing is that my mother always wanted to go to India. My father wouldn't go. He said, "They took my son, isn't that enough?" So, I mean, he gives you a flavor of my father, You wonder where it comes from, that arrogance and pride there. Well, I've got to, at least I have an excuse. So but here, to make it quick, my father was playing tennis till he was 83 years old. He had a abdominal blockage, they called it. Went into a good hospital under the care of good doctors, so they say. And it was supposed to, they were going to do a little surgery. It was an overnight. He went in the afternoon or maybe the morning, and I was going to pick him up the next day. Me and my brother were going to pick him up and take him home. Okay, fine. So we were with him after the night to recover. Operation went fine. We, chit-chatting with him. And then, it was 9 o'clock. He said, you go home, come get me in the morning. So I came in the morning with my brother. And he wasn't in the room. I said, well, what happened? I said, I thought, he's so stubborn, he's probably go down to pay and get out himself, So I said, where's my father? Where's the accounts office or this? He said, no. He's in intensive care. I said, what? He had caught in 24 hours some virulent kind of, I don't know what, it's a respiratory disease. Those hospitals are just petri dishes brewing, who knows, all kinds of stuff, So he was in intensive care. So we had to put on the whole suits and the whole thing. They said, they're going to pump me full of antibiotics. I'll be fine. Went back the next day. He couldn't talk. Went back the third day. He'd slipped into a coma. He did not speak. I can't remember exactly, but it was at least 2 or 3 weeks. He was just out on his back, couldn't function. He was in the typical, talk about bedside manner, they told the family, called us together. The doctor said, basically he's brain dead. He's a vegetable. We can remove him to. They have a name for it. I forget what it's called. But basically, they just warehouse you. They'll have all the machines, and the bellows breathes for you, and the blood. But you're gone. The lights are on. Nobody's home. So, whoa, that was a shock. This is after 3 weeks, after being in that state for 3 weeks. So then my father had made her promise, do not leave me hooked up to machines as a vegetable. Just please be kind on me and let me go. She'd made her promise. So she said, look, unhook him, keep the monitors, but as far as making him breathe and the blood, let him go. Let him have a little dignity. Let him go. If he survives, we'll do everything. If he can breathe without the machines, but otherwise, just let the man go. So she said that they'd been married 60 years. She completely unraveled. My sister took her home. Now I'm with my dimwit, materialistic brother. He's got redeeming features. I was with an atheist doctor who said, I don't know what you're praying for. It's going to take a miracle, this guy, I said, well. And then, and my fundamentalist, born-again Uncle Chuck, hardcore Christian. They wouldn't let me put neck beads on. They wouldn't let me put the holy name on, some kind of bhajan in the background. They wouldn't, the Kunti Ma, nothing. I couldn't even say Krishna, nothing. They were freaked if I tried anything, and believe me, I tried. So I'm sitting there in the room with my fundamentalist born-again Christian uncle and my brother, materialistic, mechanistic brother, and my father, who materially, he was a good man. He did a lot. Neela will tell you, he was a good guy. He did a lot to help us, our family. And here's the one chance I can do something for my father, and I can't do it. And I was attached to my father. I was, at the right distance, but I was attached. So I was praying to Krishna, please help me, please. How can I let him go? I can't do anything for him. So there's the death rattle. If you ever seen, I think their lungs are filling up and they kind of make that sound, So I told my brother, I said, I think this is it, Jeff. This is it. And he just walked over and said, well, this reading says this, and this over this means this, and the oxygen level is still this, And he touched the machines, and they were the monitors, and they were touch sensitive, and it threw off all the readings. So it was literally, there was a blue light on top, and he said, beep, 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 and a flashing blue light. So my uncle and my brother panicked. They went out to get to the nurse's station. I'm alone with my father. Now remember, he's supposed to be brain dead. He has not moved, said a word, done anything for 3 weeks. I leaned over and I grabbed his shoulders. He's flat on the bed. I said, Dad. I said, this is it. I said, say Krishna. Say Krishna. I didn't think I had time to say the whole mantra. I thought, well, it's probably, he may not even be in there anymore or conscious, but the last sense to go is hearing. So I thought maybe he'll hear Krishna as he's going. I can do something. He opened his eyes. He looked right at me. He put his, I was leaning over him, because I gave him a good shake or two, and I had a hold of his shoulders. He put his arms up. He was trying to grab my shoulders. He got my shoulders and he pulled himself up a couple inches off the bed. By this time, the nurse, the doctor, my fundamentalist born-again Christian uncle, and my materialistic brother are in the doorway. And my father, looking at me, clear as a bell, holding on to me, trying to pull himself up, he said, Krishna, and fell back dead. And my uncle said, what the hell was that? They were trying to figure it out, And to tell the truth, I was pretty happy. My brother said, oh, our father is gone. Let's go for a walk on the beach. I'm irreconcilable. I said, I think it was pretty blissful. He said, what kind of son are you, The doctor said to me, I said, hey, doc, what do you call that? He said, well, sometime there's medical phenomena we cannot explain. I said, look up miracle, buddy. Look it up in the dictionary. Material phenomena we cannot explain. And I have absolutely no doubt that Krishna knew I was attached to my father, and he gave a little mercy. I have absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, he's not back to Godhead, but I'm sure he's in a devotee family somewhere. So Krishna protects his devotees, and he protects those beloved of the devotees, so we don't have to worry.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.